Welcome to the Deep Dive, which is powered by AI-deas. We are very proud to be part of the Good Business podcast series that's hosted by the PHINMA-DLSU Center for Business and Society, and it's all dedicated to this vital mission of promoting business as a force for good.
Absolutely. And just a quick note for everyone listening, this deep dive, our analysis today, it's actually an AI-generated podcast. We made it through Notebook LM. It really helps us synthesize these, complex sources much faster so you get straight to the core insights.
Right. And today, we are diving deep into the sources you shared with us. We're focusing on how governments can potentially transform their massive spending into a really effective tool for environmental change. Specifically, we're digging into an article from the Good Business column to Rappler. It's titled, Improving Government Procurement for Sustainability.
Yes, and the topic here is Green Public Procurement, or GPP as we'll probably call it. Think of GPP as, a kind of strategic lever. We're asking you, the listener, to really imagine a world where every single peso the Philippine government spends, whether it's for, toilet paper, office supplies, even huge government vehicles, is consciously spent to help sustainability.
That sounds ambitious, maybe even a bit idealistic. But the source material really makes a powerful case just based on the sheer scale involved here. We're not talking small change, are we? Public procurement, it makes up a major, really significant share of the country's GDP. The government isn't just, a rule maker. It's arguably the biggest single customer in the whole country.
Exactly. Billions of pesos spent every single year buying goods and services. Billions. And the sources really emphasize that this huge purchasing power, if it's directed properly, with intention, it could actually catalyze a sustainable market. It's like an engine, powerful enough to maybe shift the entire market towards greener practices. When the government decides to buy green, suppliers kind of have to listen, right?
Okay, let's unpack that a bit more. GPP, we need a clearer picture. When we say green public procurement, what does that actually mean in practice? What are the criteria?
Well, at its heart, GPP is really about looking at the whole life cycle of a product or service. It means making conscious choices, deliberate choices, to buy things that cause the least harm to the environment. And that's from, getting the raw materials through manufacturing, how it's used, and even how it's disposed of eventually. It's definitely going way beyond just asking, okay, what's the absolute cheapest price we can get right now?
So it's about applying a green filter to everyday things. The sources give some good concrete examples, like buying tissue paper that is eco-certified, or maybe using training facilities that can prove they run sustainably.
Exactly. And that's what creates this ripple effect we talked about. When the government, which is this massive anchor customer, starts demanding green products, the whole supplier network has to adapt. That demand pushes vendors, pushes suppliers to actually change how they produce things. It's a fundamental shift.
So it's market pressure, but from the top down. If suppliers see that the biggest buyer out there only wants sustainable stuff, then they have a huge reason to, innovate and invest in greener methods. And then as more manufacturers offer these sustainable goods, suddenly they're not just niche products anymore. And that helps build consumer trust too, sends a really powerful signal through the economy.
Yeah, and that signal is really needed right now. The sources are quite blunt about it. They describe the Philippine market currently as being young and raw when it comes to sustainability.
No.
So this kind of directed public buying, GPP, it isn't just a nice-to-have goal. It seems essential right now to actually help that sustainable sector grow up, basically, mature.
Okay, if the market's young and raw, then we need strong policies underneath it all. You mentioned this isn't brand new, so what's the history here? Where did the government first start laying the groundwork for GPP?
Well, we can trace it back quite a way, actually, to Presidential Executive Order 301 back in 2004. That was really the first step, introducing these green mechanisms into procurement. Think of it like the initial sketch. Then, more significant progress came in 2017. That's when the GPP roadmap was institutionalized.
Right, the roadmap. That sounds important because it got specific, didn't it? It wasn't just general ideas. It brought in green criteria for, I think it was 20 common use and non-common use supplies and equipment, the CSE and non-CSE things.
Yeah.
Stuff like office supplies, vehicles.
Precisely. Standard things, bought in bulk. So that was a big step. And then even more recently, the commitment was sort of cemented in law with the new government procurement law, that's RA 12009. This law formally puts sustainability into the legal framework, which is good. However, the sources do point out that while the law mentions sustainability, that the actual practical guidelines on how to do GPP, they're still quite limited. It's like it provided the chapter title, but not the detailed instructions,
Okay. limited guidelines. But the overall vision, it's national, isn't it? It's not just stuck in one procurement department somewhere.
No, definitely not. And that's where NED, the National Economic and Development Authority, comes in. Their big plan, the Philippine Action Plan for Sustainable Consumption and Production, PP4SCP, they call it explicitly names GPP as a key initiative, specifically for greening infrastructure and markets. And what's really interesting is how GPP is woven into the short-term, the medium-term, and the long-term national goals. So the framework is definitely there. It spans the whole planning horizon.
Okay, so let's recap. We've got immense government purchasing power. We have policies going back 2 decades. We have a national vision set by NEI, and yet the sources suggest GPP isn't really hitting its potential. Not even close, maybe. Which means the problem probably isn't the intention behind the policy. It's more about the implementation, right? Getting it done on the ground. Our sources seem to pinpoint 5 critical gaps, 5 hurdles. And we need to understand these not just as a list, but maybe as like systemic issues.
Absolutely. Systemic is the right word. The challenges really seem to fall into, let's say, 3 main areas. First, what green stuff can procurement officers actually buy? Second, how are the agencies and the people in them trained to buy it? And third, why aren't manufacturers motivated enough to supply it in the first place?
Right. Okay, let's start with that first bucket, the supply side. What can they buy? The first issue identified is scarcity and availability. Basically, not enough green stuff is out there. A procurement officer might genuinely want to buy eco-certified paper or sustainable cleaning supplies, but they just can't find enough options, especially for those high-volume common items, the CSE and non-CSE things that actually meet the green technical specs. Is that it?
That's exactly it. And that creates immediate problems, right? You can have a mandate for GPP, but if the products aren't available on the market, the policy just stalls. Then the second issue is more about the institutions themselves. A lack of system and training. There just isn't a comprehensive, standard way to train people across government agencies and then monitor if they're doing it right. How are local agencies supposed to implement GPP correctly if they haven't been properly trained or if the training is inconsistent?
Yeah, and the sources stress this isn't just about a one-off training course either. It's about succession planning. People in procurement roles, they move around, they get promoted, they leave. If there's no system to constantly train the new people coming in, all that knowledge just walks out the door. And then sticking to GPP principles becomes kind of random, maybe impossible to track effectively.
Exactly. Very haphazard. Now, moving to the market side of things. The third big hurdle is the lack of private sector incentives. We already said shifting from traditional production to sustainable methods costs money. It's an investment for companies. Yet the sources find there's a serious lack of real incentives, financial ones, or maybe competitive advantages to push manufacturers to make that change. So why would a private company take on that extra cost if the cheapest, maybe non-green bid often still wins the contract anyway?
That's a really important point. Incentives like tax breaks or subsidies, they sound like they'd cost the government money up front in the short term. Does the source material talk about that trade-off? Is the long-term gain of having a sustainable market structure actually worth that immediate cost?
It strongly implies it is. The idea is, without those meaningful incentives, the supply side, the market for green goods, it will likely never grow enough to bring prices down naturally through competition and scale. So the cost of not acting, which means continued environmental damage, reliance on unsustainable imports, maybe that cost probably far outweighs the short-term cash needed to kind of jumpstart the green supply side.
That makes a lot of sense when you put it like that. Okay, the fourth gap. This one focuses on something that already exists but isn't being used properly.
Correct. There is actually a system for certifying green products in the Philippines. It's the National Eco-Labeling Program Green Choice Philippines, or NELT-GCP. But the problem is, this system is apparently severely underutilized. It's barely integrated into how public procurement decisions are actually made day to day. So we built the tool to help identify what's genuinely green, but the people buying things often aren't using that tool.
An underused tool. Okay, and now for the last one. The fifth gap, which the sources highlight as perhaps the most, well, striking issue. It suggests maybe a lack of real urgency about making this work. It's about delayed evaluation. Is it right that the actual review, the evaluation of how GPP implementation is going, isn't scheduled until 2031?
Yes. That's the detail that really jumps out. 2031, think about that. We're talking about setting a policy, potentially struggling with implementing it because of all these other gaps we just discussed, and then basically agreeing not to formally check the results or learn lessons for almost an entire decade. It's quite something.
Wait, seriously, 2031? That seems incredibly late. It means the whole process misses out on years of vital learning, adjustments, finding out what works and what doesn't. What's the real cost of waiting 10 years to find out if your big sustainability procurement plan is actually failing?
Oh, the cost is huge, monumental potentially. It means that inefficient, possibly ineffective, and certainly unsustainable buying practices could just continue unchecked for a decade. Billions of pesos could be spent suboptimally without any systemic correction based on actual data. We lose the chance to tweak the standards, update the training methods, maybe change the incentives for suppliers based on what the evidence tells us. It's almost like guaranteeing slow, unguided progress or maybe even stagnation.
Okay, so the policies exist, but the reality on the ground, supply shortages, lack of training, not enough motivation for businesses, tools being ignored, and this incredibly delayed feedback loop, it's crippling the whole system. Right, we need to shift gears now. Enough about the problems. Let's talk solutions. What does the source material suggest we actually do about these 5 fundamental issues? How do we fix this?
Yes, definitely time to move from diagnosis to prescription. The source material offers 5 pretty clear, actionable recommendations for immediate steps. The first one tackles that operational inertia, the lack of on-the-ground action. We need to operationalize GPP at all levels of government. This isn't just about saying do GPP. It means serious, widespread training and setting up clear, measurable, time-bound targets. Goals that go well beyond the limited text in RA 12,009 and its IRR.
Okay, measurable goals. That's key.
Yeah.
Solution number 2, that must address the underused eco-labeling program, the NELP-GCP.
Exactly. Eco-labels need to be formally recognized and integrated into procurement, not just an afterthought, but built into the process, into the annual procurement plans. And this isn't theoretical. The sources point to places like Japan, Singapore, France, where they have successful models for doing this. Integrating recognized eco-labels makes it much clearer and easier for the procurement officers, takes away the guesswork.
Makes sense. Reduces ambiguity. Okay, third solution. This must be about tackling the supply shortage by motivating the private sector, right?
Precisely. We need meaningful private sector support. Real incentives, not just suggestions. The source suggests things like actual tax subsidies for producing green goods, or maybe granting extra points for sustainability during the bidding process itself. That can make a green bid competitive, even if it's slightly more expensive initially, or even things like offering discounted fees for getting that NELP GCP certification, making it easier for businesses to get on board.
Okay, so that directly addresses the cost barrier for businesses. Make it financially viable, maybe even profitable to go green. The market should respond to that. What about making the process easier for the government buyers themselves, the ones doing the actual purchasing?
Yes, that's solution number 4, digital improvement. We need to fix up the existing online procurement directories. They need to be genuinely user-friendly, easy to search and navigate, and crucially, they need to prominently feature specific information about green products and the suppliers who are certified sustainable. If finding the green option online is harder than finding the regular one, the policy is always going to struggle, isn't it?
Absolutely. Make the green choice the easy choice. Okay, and finally, we have to address that 2031 evaluation problem, the elephant in the room. How do we get real-time tracking and avoid waiting a decade for feedback?
Solution 5 tackles that head-on. It proposes replacing that delayed 2031 review with the monitoring, evaluation, accountability, and learning framework, the MEAL framework. This is a pretty standard tool in governance, used internationally. Instead of one massive report years down the line, MEAL means implementation is tracked continuously, ideally in real time. Imagine procurement officers maybe filling out simple digital dashboards. You get instant data, problems can be spotted and addressed quickly, improvements can be guided by immediate, ongoing evidence, not a report that's already out of date the day it lands.
That sounds much more like modern management, doesn't it? Shifting from just setting policy to actively managing implementation with data. And the sources mention other countries are already doing this successfully.
Yes. Model countries in Asia, Europe, the Americas, they show that sustainable public procurement really can work, but only when the implementation part is taken just as seriously as writing the initial policy.
Right. So the potential is definitely there. The government has the buying power, the plans are written down. If these practical recommendations are adopted, especially focusing on good governance and that real-time feedback, it seems possible to move past that young and raw market status quite quickly.
And actually shape a genuinely better, greener market for the future.
That potential feels huge and maybe more immediate than we think. Which brings us to a final thought for you, our listener. Since GPP really depends on suppliers changing how they produce things to meet this new green demand, Just consider this. What if the government brought in a rule, a legally binding one, that mandated favoring bids that were maybe just 1% or 2% more expensive, but were guaranteed 100% sustainable and eco-certified? How fast do you think the entire market infrastructure, from materials sourcing right through to manufacturing, would scramble to change so they could win those guaranteed government contracts?
That really shows you the power of directing the money flow, doesn't it?
It certainly does. Well, this has been the Deep Dive.
And let's leave you with that powerful concluding thought directly from the source material we looked at today. The government has purchasing power and plans. With practical recommendations and good governance, green public procurement can be a catalyst in shaping a better and greener market.